I've been exploring a theory called modern day slavery, and it came to mind really from my personal experience. Before we get into it, let's first of all define what a slave is. A slave is a person who is forced to work for and obey another and is considered property of another. First of all, it doesn't say considered property of another person, right? Modern day slavery often is tied to being owned by things, actions, characteristics. I think there's three core characteristics of a slave. How you can know, right, when somebody is being enslaved by something, a system, a situation, or a feeling, or even a thought. Number one, fear. They're always going to be afraid of what's going to happen if they're not enslaved anymore, right? Because one of the biggest characteristics also of slave masters is it's always going to put fear in your heart. What's going to happen if you don't do this, right? What's going to happen if I do this? What's going to happen if I do this? If I don't do this, what's going to happen? If I don't show up and do what my slave master wants me to do, then what's going to happen? Second characteristic, lack of self-control. You don't control you anymore. You don't control your schedule. You don't control what you do. Oftentimes, a really good example of this is you wake up in the morning, you scroll through social media for hours. You switch over to TikTok, you scroll for a couple more hours. You end up being a slave to social media, right? You end up being a slave to Instagram and TikTok. This is a perfect segue for the final characteristic. And this one is the most complex and my favorite one, actually. So this is called the gateway theory, right? So where one slave master leads you to another slave master. Back in the day, slave masters were known to trade their slaves. If you had a really good slave, you traded him to another one, and then they traded him to another one, and then they traded them to another one. It's the same situation with modern day slavery, right? When you're a slave to, say, for instance, alcohol tends to trade you to another substance. Maybe cocaine, maybe doing other drugs. Every situation and every slave master has that characteristics of the gateway theory, where you go from one to another, right? And it ties into the whole self-control thing because you really don't control yourself, right? You don't control your destiny anymore. So you're getting traded back and forth. So now that we've learned the characteristics of slavery, I'm here to tell you about my new project. It's called the Sober Social Club. It's a podcast that I've put together where I'll be sharing my whole life as a slave, essentially. I'll be bringing in my family. I'll be bringing in my friends. I'll be bringing in experts in the industry. And all we're going to be talking about is why people end up being slaves, why they end up staying so long in slavery, and why things are just so difficult, especially in the slavery of addiction. Join us. If you know somebody that could learn from this and somebody who might be in slavery, share this video with them as well. And we can all learn together. We can explore these theories together. Knowledge is the greatest liberator.